Well, welcome, everybody. Hey, your backup plan tribe to today's special live broadcast with a very special guest, Craig Brown. I'm so excited to have him come on our live broadcast today. For any of our listeners, if you are new here, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. It's down here, there somewhere. Just down here, you'll find the like button. And also, if you like it, share it with your friends and family. And click on the notifications there to follow my channel. You never know when we're going to have some more live broadcasts like this one. Very, very exciting today. Very exciting. My name is Tina Ginn. If you are new here, welcome to your backup plan tribe. I am an emergency preparedness coach. Couldn't find my words for a second. A best-selling author, a financial expert, and an app developer of Your Backup Plan app. And I'm located here in beautiful Vancouver, BC, Canada. And I have a special guest today from Washington, D.C. So we are actually in different parts of the continent from one side to the other. And COVID is still around to all of us. So anybody listening for years later, yes, we are still in the pandemic. If we post step-by-step tutorials each and every week on our channel, and sometimes current events in the news, some tricks and tips from our guest speakers that we have come on our channel. Please hit the subscribe button if you already haven't, if you are new here. Your Backup Plan app puts your life in one place in preparation of any unpredictable circumstance. And believe me, there are many. We talk about them each and every week, sometimes multiple times in a week, about all those different circumstances that come across our lives. And the app, when you complete it, will help take that aftermath, that tragedy of the not knowing, where your mind disappears and you're in stress and you can't work and your family is fighting and it's turmoil. And I just want to make sure that you take that painful aftermath out of any circumstance when you help get your life in one place. And you're prepared for the unexpected, because you never know what tomorrow will bring. So I am very happy today to introduce a very special guest. His name is Craig Brown, and I'm going to just bring him on today. He's from Washington, D.C., a very special guest today. I'm going to read a little bit about you here, Craig.
Okay, that's fine.
He has a book, Stop Hiding, Start Healing, right? When did you write that book, Craig?
It was published in December.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's a COVID book.
Yeah, you could say that. You could say a little bit of a change in lifestyle allowed me a little bit more time, and was prompted last June actually to start writing it, and I did, and got it published in December. So, yep.
Awesome. So Craig Brown from Washington, D.C. is our special guest today on our live stream. His title is From Cocaine Dealer to Recovery Pastor, How I Stopped Hiding So I Could Start Healing. In the 1980s, Craig Brown, author of Stop Hiding, Start Healing, lived the high life. He worked for one of the biggest cocaine dealers on the East Coast, partied with the music moguls and professional athletes while still self-medicating on drugs and alcohol. Welcome, Craig, to our show today.
Thank you, Tina. Great to be with you.
Awesome. I don't think I've had any particular introduction such as that before, such as yours.
Yeah, well, it's been quite a ride, but it has improved greatly over the last 35 years. So we'll talk about that, I'm sure.
Yes. So tell me when it started, Craig. Your story is unbelievable.
Wow, when it started. Well, like all of us, I was given a certain family. I didn't have a choice. So I'm in a family. My dad was a minister, um, and my mom was a teacher. But we grew up in the church, and we grew up with my father in that role. And I'm not sure, you probably over the years heard about the reputation that preachers' kids have, and I lived up to it to a degree. But at a very young age, when all of our, when everything is being formed, in our life and what have you, I was brought up in this environment, and where everything about our family was, to make our father look good, because he was, the minister, and my mom was the typical enabler to make the family look good. So my sisters and I have two older sisters. We always had to be on. We always had to be on in front of the church members and everything else to make dad look good. And it was, it was kind of unfair pressure to be putting on, us as young kids. And as young kids, as all of us did, we developed coping mechanisms and other escape, ways of escape in dealing with pain and guilt, shame, you name it, abandonment. But early on, uh, I realized what my father was in the pulpit was far different than what he was behind closed doors. And my dad struggled with a lot of demons. He was a rather angry guy. He was a narcissist. And he took a lot of it out on my sisters and I, right? So it was total confusion, right? We're in the church, and we're seeing him in this role, but yet behind the scenes it was different. And it was just sad. I longed for that relationship as any son or any daughter would with their dad. And I can count on one hand the number of father and son things that he and I did together, and I'd still have, fingers left over. He just didn't seem to be invested in us as kids. He just didn't seem interested in our interests or dreams or what have you, because everything's centered around him. So we really didn't have any identity.
Mhm.
Our identity was Father Brown's family. Our identity was Father Brown's son. And well, I didn't know any better. I mean, I was growing up in this environment, and as far as was concerned, it was a normal family environment until much later. After the fact, when I entered, when I entered into the pit of hell, and then I was in that drug world, and I'm out of that, and I'm going through my healing and my recovery, and then I'm looking back, because the whole point of recovery is finding out the root and the catalyst for my choosing drugs, alcohol, whatever it is, to fill the void. And so I was able to go back and process all that. And but so we grew up in that environment, and it just laid groundwork for me, because I was missing a lot of things. I didn't have, or had very little self-esteem or self-discipline or self-control, or really discerning right from wrong or what have you. And I just longed for someone, you know show me, show me the way here, right? I had decent teachers. I was a really good athlete. I was supposed to play college basketball, and high school was somewhat of a struggle academically. And I was just kind of floundering. And my sisters and I actually discussed this a lot, and we all agree that we kind of brought ourselves up.
It
And
sounds
it's
like I should start singing that song, Looking for Love in All the Wrong Places.
You go ahead and start. I don't know if you want me to sing. I don't know if that was a part of the deal here, Tina. You do not want me to sing,
Me
but you're
neither.
right. No, no, go for it. But no, you're right. You're right. You see, what we don't get, what we do not receive, And I'm talking about young age through your youth, through teenage years, through young adult. What we're not receiving, right? We are going to find it somewhere else. We just are. And the relationship between father, son, father, daughter, my mom was, she just tried to keep everything looking good and under control and what have you, bless her heart. Now they've since passed on, but you know, if 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 you, like you and I were discussing earlier, if you're not secure mentally, emotionally, right, spiritually, even physically, in those areas of your life, and you're just playing with loose ends, you're going to find somewhere. And I unfortunately found it in the wrong place.
When
Which,
did it start for you, Craig? When did that start for
um,
when you started
well,
getting
uh,
involved? Were
yeah,
you doing it for the people? Were you doing it for the money? What did
no,
you
no, no,
find your
no,
reason that you started doing it for?
no. I did. It was totally by accident. It wasn't I had no mission or purpose at that time. So it's not like, I think I'll go, do. I was just floundering, right? But I started drinking in high school just because and it wasn't I didn't have an issue. Just every now and then at a party or something like that. But so it never really became an issue until I graduated from high school. And that was my escape from, right,
Home.
under the pressure and just the undue and the dysfunction within our family. I was out. And I didn't have any relationship with God. I didn't have my spiritual life was empty. And I just had to get out. And so I went away to college, and that's where my pit of hell journey began, because I got to campus and I had no one telling me what to do. I was completely free and independent for the first time in my life. But I did not have the strength or the self-discipline or the control to manage my life accordingly. And I just drank and I dropped out of college, and then Tina, I went back home and I began working in a bar in Washington D.C. And it was there. The bar was owned by the biggest cocaine dealer on the entire East Coast. Had a
Oh,
major drug trade going on. And I didn't really, I kind of heard about it, but I didn't know it until I began working there. And that's when I got sucked up into that drug world. And he ran a major operation out of that establishment. And, here I am, 19 years old, and I'm like, oh, for someone that, like you said, looking for love or looking for purpose or looking for acceptance, I found it. And it was in all the wrong places. You're right. You're right. And so I got drawn into that. And my life was all about cocaine and drinking. And it was just absolutely disgusting. And I was in
so
the pit of,
I'm
pit of
really
hell.
naive when it comes to this sort of thing.
Okay.
How does it just start with the simplest of things? When you're put into that environment,
A
where does it
decision,
just start? By
a
trying
decision.
it? By
Yeah, a decision. Yeah. Yeah. It varies for most individuals, it really does. But it and I now um I hope your listeners should understand that 35 years later now, I've been in, recovery ministry and Christ Center recovery ministry for 22 years. So, I that long, gave me a purpose and a passion all these years later to do this for the last 22 years. But here's my experience, and this is what I knew for me, and I've seen in thousands of lives of people I've helped. And that is, addiction starts with a decision. It really does. There's a catalyst and a root somewhere, right? Somewhere that's saying, let's try to use this to medicate that longing or that void, or medicate this, or I'm just angry. This just makes me feel better, right? And it's all about pleasing ourselves. It's about getting that euphoria in such an artificial way, right? And
Mhm.
so mine began with a decision. It was readily available. Everybody had it in the 80s in the United States, especially all throughout DC. And so you turn you you know everybody was using, everybody. And so that was my excuse, right? That was my excuse, and it was part of the lifestyle. So he's carrying on this major operation. I did some low level dealing here and there. He was a major player, and we had major people coming in and out of that establishment, and it was just, you think at that age, and when you're involved in that, this is like, wow, this is something. And then in the midst of it, Tina, for those of us that are in that pit of hell, you begin, you have very little self awareness at all. But I could remember, being in that environment and still looking around going, what am I doing here? But I didn't do anything about it to change it until the pain, like the first chapter of my book is when the pain is greater than your fear. And I'm a firm believer that we will not change anything in our life. And you're such an expert of finances and other, backup plans, etc., for life and whatever. But even financially, you will not change your habits until the pain is greater than your fear. And the same is true for all of us, emotionally, mentally, physically, especially dealing with an addiction. So I had to get to the point where my pain was greater than my fear of changing. And that took many years, but I finally got to that defining moment in my life, and it changed. My life changed.
I mean, it started with an addiction, of course, you using it and you being in that environment. But it must be like a whirlwind where you might ask yourself, what am I doing? But at the same time, you're thinking, well, this is fun.
Yeah,
Well, this is
absolutely.
exciting. This is,
It was. Oh yeah, absolutely. Every night was a party. Every single day was a party. And I'm not going to go into real deep details, but I ended up in the hospital with a hole in my stomach. I had numerous car accidents. I sideswiped 4 cars one night when I was completely drunk and got away until the cops found me. I don't have time to go in all the different situations due to my own. Now, I blamed everybody else, Tina, but it was my own doing.
yeah.
It was my own doing. And yeah, you operate in that, even though you're miserable, I mean, depressed, in darkness, but it's a party. And it's just a
It's like two
sad,
opposites, isn't it? It's like black and white.
total, 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 absolutely. But you don't see that. You don't see that because and this is what happens with people in life struggles. We take on the identity of pain, shame, guilt, depression, darkness. We take on that identity because that's all we know. And then we're afraid to get out of it because what's it look like on the other side? We don't know any better. So we stay in it. It's our comfort zone, but it's killing us. And, it's just a miserable life. And I had that, I went through it. It was my own doing.
Yeah.
But everything I am today, Tina, everything I am today is a result of my deepest, darkest pain, which
And
prompted
now
me to
that's the
write the book.
addiction side. But once
Yes.
you get involved with the drug dealing part itself, how on earth do you even get out of it? Because it's like a cyclone where, I mean, I'm no pro, but absolutely by far, I'm the opposite end of the spectrum. But I've watched Good Girls. Have you watched Good Girls on TV?
Oh, sure. Sure.
Well,
Absolutely.
once you get
Yeah.
into that momentum, how do you get out of it? Like, is there an
Um,
out of it somehow?
there is. but I was not in it at the level that my employer was in it, right? Unfortunately, well, I don't know if it's unfortunate, but people at that level are either going to die, they're going to get killed, they're going to die, they're going to get eventually the FBI, others, DEA, they're going to find out and track them. And but this was back in the early 80s, you know. So although those resources were probably hovering and everything else, you know, I mean, even police officers were coming in and indulging and what have you. So, you know, um, how do you
Celebrities,
get out? Yeah. Oh yeah.
celebrities,
Yeah,
athletes,
yeah, sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it was just,
politicians.
yes, Capitol Hill people. Oh, absolutely.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
Actually, this guy was connected with what was going on at Capitol Hill. There was a, I can't recall what year it was, but there was a major, there was a lot of cocaine going around Capitol Hill, and these two gentlemen were involved. And I'm not sure of the connection, and I don't really care. But yeah, it was every area, you know, it affected every area. And this used to be the hub that people would come in, not the only place, but people would come in, right?
Mhm.
But you ask, how do you get out? I, for me personally, I just got to a place um, where I realized I was going to die, you know, or end up in this life of destruction. And I was determined to get out. And I did.
What
I
did your what there must have been an instance where you said, I can't keep doing this. Like what was the instance what woke you up?
I had a few. I had a few. One of them in particular, and I don't think I've shared this. I was going, we were at the bar, and a number of TV people used to come in from local TV stations. And there's one producer that did come in, and he was a heavy cocaine user, right? And he was there one night. We lived in the same area. I knew that. So he left, and I don't know what happened to him that night, but I closed up and with the other employees and everything else. And then I made my way home. Well, I'm pulling off the main highway on the exit, and I'm coming off the exit, and I see two taillights down in the woods of this car. And I'm like, oh man, I'm like, someone just ran off the road. Well, so I pulled over. I wasn't drunk or anything at that time. I just was going home. And lo and behold, it's this producer from the local television station who wrecked his car by him. It was demolished. And I went down to the car and I helped him get out. And he's just totally out of it and everything else. And I said, well, can I give you a ride home? Let's at least, you know, because absolute. So I gave him a ride home, and we ended up doing drugs sitting there at his living room. And it was one of those situations, Tina. It was one of the many that led me to the place where I was like, "This is I gotta get out of here." But I'm sitting. He's sitting across from me. He's like in his 40s. You know, I'm in young 20s, and I'm looking at him, going, "Oh my gosh." I had enough of a self-awareness and a discernment to look and say, you know, this is pathetic. He was crying the blues. He was divorced. He was this and he was that. And now I have my own stuff, right? And I'm looking at him going, oh my God, man, I'm going to end up like him. That was one of the defining moments of a few, but it was in 85 that I had that epiphany, and I said, I've got to get out of this. I got to get out of this drug life and drinking and this lifestyle, or I'm going to die. And I did. I extricated myself from that lifestyle, doing drugs and drinking and everything else. And I thought I did it on my own. But let me just interject here the spiritual component, because I'm a firm believer that God's hand is on all of us. And when we need him the most, and we call out for that help in dire need, things begin to happen. And that was an epiphany for me.
When you
And
surrender, when you
yeah,
surrender
but
to.
I did. But here's the kicker. I I did, but I did. I extricated myself from that lifestyle, thinking I did it myself. And then but here's the other thing, Tina. I'd quit doing cocaine, drugs, all drugs, quit drinking, and I'd say 6, 7 years and clean and not doing any of that, but I was miserable, still miserable because I still had a lot of shame, guilt, hurt, pain, trauma, all kinds of stuff that was still weighing on my life and holding me back. And I was still down. I was, I could put it on when I needed to and be up, cheery and the life of the party. But I was still miserable. And that was the thing. I was like, well, darn, I haven't done any of that in all these years, but something's missing and but I'm in so much pain still from all that and what I didn't get as a kid. And lo and behold, this is the defining moment. And I got to stop talking because I'm sure you have questions. But here's the defining moment. Okay. I got that phone call from my sister that dad was dying. And she said, we better get to the hospital. My dad had older and had a number of different health issues. And my sister says, we better get to the hospital. Dad may not make it because he had a major operation. And so we all rushed over there. And Tina, this was the defining moment when the pain in my life was greater than my fear. Because I stood at his bedside in the intensive care unit and I looked at my dad. He was he was struggling breathing. He was really suffering. And I stood there and my entire life came rushing before me. And I said to myself, my dad's going to die. I've had no relationship with him whatsoever. And his son, I'm a complete failure, total failure. And it shook me to the core and this is where God's sense of humor comes in because he's like, oh, so you didn't have it with him, huh? And you have yet to fully surrender and deal with everything in your life, huh? Well, I'm going to bring you to your father's bedside and
Show
let's
you.
see what shook me totally to the next day, Tina. No one taught me how to do this. No one led me in any prayers or anything, but I just cried out and I prayed. I prayed I think probably earnestly, uh, for the first time and said, God, take over my life. Take this pain and this shame and this guilt, all this burden I'm carrying, because I can't do it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And that was it. And when I was done praying, Tina, my life was completely different in an instant. Now, the burden was lifted, the pain had been lifted, my whole perspective on life changed in an instant. But I still had a lot of work to do because I left a lot of trauma behind me. That's when my recovery started, and that was 28 years ago.
Oh, that's so cool. But I know the problem with addictions is trying to get out of it. But as a drug dealer, do you still kept on having people ask you for more drugs, more cocaine? Like, hey, or did you just try and hide away from that? Like, how do you get yourself
No,
out of
I
that?
didn't. No, I didn't hang out with. This is the other part of having a backup plan, and that is I need to find new friends.
Yeah.
I need to find a new network to be a part of. I need to find and be honest with myself and my family and my friends. I need to really surround myself with a new sphere group of friends. And here's the kicker. I'm in the midst of that pit of hell, Tina, and all my friends are off at Duke and Tufts and Brown, Harvard. One's a judge in DC now. They're all attorneys. They're all, they had their success track on track. They didn't need a backup plan. They were on it.
They
they had it.
created it.
Yeah, early. Of course, here I am. I'm like, oh, great figures. But no, I didn't. That was it. I'd had
You washed
enough.
your hands of it.
I did. And you have to do that. You have to do that. You have to be able to, because I'm a firm believer that God removes people from your life to protect you. And he was protecting me by just, I didn't have any desire to continue on in those relationships. Now, some of them I'm still friends with. Matter of fact, one of my dear friends from that era liked my Facebook post today. I mean, we continue to keep in touch, but it's a completely different life now, totally different life now. And it's as a result of all those experiences that prompted me to write the book, because I hid everything. And it wasn't until I stopped hiding that I began to start healing. Yep. By not being around any of those people anymore. I need to go heal. See you later. It was a good party, sort of. I'm out of here. That's what I did.
That's sure tough, because I've seen so many people with addictions just trying to find it's like what I visualize is like they're taking their claws and they're trying to, move up this exasperating ladder, and they get 2 steps up and then they have another party or something and fall back down again. And then you move yourself up. And I mean, that's how I visualize it, because
that's a good note. Yeah.
I think there's so many people that are like on the edge of not wanting to, but they're still doing it. They just can't.
You're absolutely right.
Jump over that hill.
Yeah. The average person, Tina, that struggles with an addiction is confronted on average 57 times before they change or do something about it. That could be from a major intervention to a dear friend, family member confronting them and saying, listen, you're on I just observe your life, and it's just saddens us to see you do this to yourself. And there's, and you have to do it without shame and condemnation. You have to do it with abundance of grace, but also truth. The truth is, if you continue on, you may overdose. You may be in a life of destruction. But the grace is there's help and there's hope. And the people, that's a great illustration. People that are clawing their way up. Yeah, all it takes, if they don't have this support that you and I were talking about earlier, the network of safe people, trusted people, the right resources, be it Christ-centered recovery, where healing happens in circles, in small groups, where there's love, being loved unconditionally, not condemnation, people not there to fix them, but they enter into a brand new environment where it's healthy and they can trust people. The person that's crawling, and that is the network that's there, there. But the people that are almost in, or on the, teetering, all it takes is a trigger. That's all it takes is a trigger. And triggers, all of us deal with triggers every day of our life now, thanks to, this nice contraption and other stuff. Something could pop up, an ad, or, a phone call or a text. Hey, you want to go get high? Happens all the time. And I had to say, no, I don't. I'm done.
That's the hardest thing to do, though. The strength that you need to do that the first few times.
But that's where God comes in. You see, if we try to do it alone, totally on our own, I failed. And I've seen so many people at the same, and that's why I'm so passionate about stop hiding, start healing, get that higher power that you're good. And that's why they call it a higher power, because he has every bit of strength and power to help anyone get out of the pit of hell. And A lot of people, and it's natural. Maybe they had a poor church experience. Maybe they were turned away from a church, or maybe their family environment was really poor and void of any church structure or anything, and they have a real warped opinion of God. That's a real deterrent. It truly is. It's normal for people to think that way if they have certain experiences, but it's the my role for the rest of my life until I'm all used up is to help them understand that's not who he is. Loving, caring, he's there, and he has others to surround you to love you through this, and that's the difference.
I think I was just thinking of myself. If I was put in that position and I started using drugs, I can see how easy it would be to start selling and offering the drugs, because you would get tied up with either the money or that you think you're helping people. That kind of feeling that, you have something to offer them that they don't have, and they want it.
Yeah.
So I think you can kind of get tied up with that in your own head. Whereas I really think that I couldn't do it because my feeling would be I would hurt them.
Yes.
They might die, or they might get sick, or I might hurt them. So I wouldn't want to do that. But there's so many of us that get caught up in that whirlwind cycle that, it's the thing to do. It's the excitement. It's the money. It's the people want it from you, and you're wanted in a wrong way.
Yes. Yes. You have an identity. It's a warped identity. It's unhealthy identity, but you're needed, and you have what they need. And well, you talk about the financial aspect of it. I mean, oh my goodness, the money, unbelievable.
And how do you get out of that? When you get put into that much money, I mean, that's like saying you start singing and you make millions of money from singing. I mean, look at all those childhood actors that made it big, and they're a mess after.
Yeah. And that's, well, you see that and gosh, we see it be a lot in media, entertainment, and what have you in those industries, because everything's in social media now. I mean, everything. But it goes on in a lot of matter of fact, I was on another podcast, and that host, his dad was a real prominent judge. My dad was a very prominent minister, and the two of us had major, very similar experiences, with that. But I mean, it's so many times that individual. But here's the other kicker, and that is that and this is biblical, in that whatever is hidden in darkness, light is going to be shed on that, and it's only a matter of time, the people that are dealing drugs and using that to fuel, that their lifestyle, what have you. It's only a matter of time before someone's going to get caught. Yeah. And generally it's not the person themselves. They'll bust, a second tier, third tier individual. And part of it is, you tell us you take us to the main guy, you show us the main, operation, and your sentence will be, that happens every day of the week, so, but
even on Good Girls, it happens.
Hey, a lot of that is true. A lot of that, goes down. A lot of it's true. Yeah. True to life.
Did you ever have a frightening experience dealing the drugs? Like, were you ever put in a position where you were ever scared that way?
No, I had a gun. I had a gun pulled on me in Georgetown, which is there in DC. It wasn't drug related at all. It was just an issue. Someone didn't like me. That happens. I mean, that happened back then, but it wasn't as disgusting as it is now. I had health scares. I had, I've had situations, that, um, well, I had a friend of mine actually that went to try to rob a drug dealer, and he got his head blown off as soon as he got to
Oh,
the door. It was horrible. Yeah, I mean, I was in some harrowing experiences, but not necessarily too many life and death situations. My health situation I mentioned earlier, I had a hole in my stomach, and you would have thought that would have, you know,
hmm.
uh, been enough to get your attention, but it wasn't. Or having a gun pulled on you, it's like, oh, okay, well, at that point, you always develop a false reality, where that seems commonplace. If you're in an altercation or something like that, and your false reality is, oh, that's just part of where people on the outside are looking and going, oh my God, no, it's just thugs, just the wrong people, and people with horrible motives, people that, did not have any of your best interests at heart. As much as they would say they would turn on you in a heartbeat. So, and this gentleman actually, he passed away. I forget how many years after I got out of it, but he had major health issue. He was a young guy too, and died in his sleep. And so that was it.
How do you think in the 80s drug dealing would be different than now? How do you think that would look in comparison?
Not, it's not, well, it's not as different with regard that drugs are still pouring into our country. They just are. Back then, there was the borders and the waterways and everything else were far more lenient. I mean, they would than they are today. I mean, there's been a real crackdown since President Reagan, major crackdown ever and since then.
Yeah.
But what's changed is social media. If you think about it, back in the 80s, I mean, you had to run to a phone booth to make to
Yeah.
call your dealer, or run to the phone booth to call someone. And, any of those phones could have been tapped. And that was, you know, but now it's just internet. It's just unbelievable. It's taken it to a whole nother level. I mean, you can get stuff anywhere, anytime from anyone, you know. So it's changed a lot since then. And unfortunately, the need is still there. And coming through COVID, for people that were struggling, dealing with depression or stress, anxiety, isolation, and addiction, and needed recovery, that was just pulled out from under them. And it just wreaked havoc on people that were struggling.
Yeah.
So now hopefully that's loosening, and people will be able to get back face to face and get help. But yeah, it's still there, and people, addiction, the percentage of people struggling with addiction is still rampant. And the drugs are still coming in and filling the need.
Do you think you could be a drug dealer and not be a user?
I've seen that portrayed on TV. I don't know if it's true in real life, though. Now, I have heard, I forget who it was that was profiled. And now, if you'll notice, you'll see a lot of news stories of like a family or grandmother was involved, and it's just crazy. I don't know. I bet that could be the case. Yes, they treat it as a business. They see how it wreaks havoc on people's lives, and they don't want to be out of control. Generally, the people in those positions always have to be in control, and they probably know enough to say, "Oh gosh, if they do, they're all, they're in the, behind closed doors or whatever." But I'm sure it happens. Yes.
Because from a business perspective, having a product that people start becoming in need of,
Yeah.
like they just don't use it once and, that's it. It seems like, you can't just have one chip in the potato chip bag. You have to continually have more and more. So what a perfect business
Yeah.
prospect, actually,
Oh,
that
really?
would be.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's where it comes from
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah. I don't know if you heard this statistic, but someone said that if they ever legalized drugs, it would be the second biggest industry in the first or second major industry in the world. I mean, it's a need and it's a product and there's supply and a lot of demand. Yeah.
Well, my girls went to softball, and I think that Colorado came out initially with marijuana,
Yeah.
and they are funding a lot of their sports through that
Really,
in
really.
Colorado now.
Mm.
So, I mean, their locations and their fields and just their events, and I mean, they're just spectacular because
So
of
they're
this extra funding that they're
so
getting.
they're influencing maybe not in the direct way with banners all over the field, but they're influencing it through tax, and everything
Tax
else.
dollars from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's I think Virginia just passed um, legalizing. I think Virginia just did. But yeah, and that's the thing. You know, the people that struggle with drugs, alcohol, pornography, or I'm sorry, drugs, alcohol, and marijuana. Those are the drugs and alcohol. Alcohol especially, or I'm sorry, smoking cigarettes. We're all socially acceptable. You know, and then marijuana comes along, and that's becoming more socially acceptable. The one, sexual addiction, pornography, is the one where people certainly hide the most, and we find that a lot. The percentage of people that struggle with sex addiction and pornography is, I heard that, 2 out of 3 men and 1 out of 3 women struggle, and that's one of the hidden
Wow.
addictions. Um, and we see that a lot. I've cared for a number of people that have struggled with that, but that's one of the ones that is not socially acceptable, and therefore they hide it. Food, another one that's socially acceptable, but if you're having a food addiction or eating disorder, that's generally another one that's hidden behind. So there's some that are out there, out front,
Hmm.
and marijuana is one of those now. Becoming socially acceptable. Then there are the other ones that people are really hiding. But again, they have to make the decision that they have to. The pain is so great, or they have consequences that force them to change, or a crisis situation that forces them to change, and then they make that decision finally. Hopefully.
I like how you say a crisis where they change, because it's the same thing with your backup plan. Because it
Yes.
takes
Yes.
that tragedy, that experience, that instance, that profound moment that changes us to make us realize that we're not prepared ourselves, or the ones that were around us are not prepared for that tragedy that happens, that's going to
Yeah.
hit us all. I always say to people, those storms are going to come to us in many different forms, and it could be a wildfire, it could be a hurricane, it could be
Yes.
a sickness, it could be a car accident, it could be a flood, it could be anything, and we're not prepared for the unexpected. And I think one of the highest numbers in British Columbia right now is overdose deaths.
Oh, well, yes. Yes.
They can't seem to get their handle on overdose. And of course, like you said, it's from all these different drugs that are coming into
Well,
the
mainly
country,
fentanyl.
right?
Yeah, fentanyl. What started happening is um, the, people couldn't get the opioids. They couldn't get the prescriptions anymore, because the doctor got busted, or their supplier, ended up arrested or went away, and so they switched to heroin. Heroin's much cheaper, very similar euphoria that you get with heroin. But what started happening is that the drug dealers were cutting it with fentanyl, and fentanyl, deadly, just deadly. So addicts, when they're when they're going taking that hit of heroin, and if it's laced with fentanyl, and it's a dose that's far greater than, you never know what you're going to get, and it's you just don't. But it was just too much, and that person, and happens all the time with people that get off of heroin and finally get sober and clean, but they do go back, they take that hit, and it was just that fentanyl was the killer, and it is. We had a major epidemic here locally. Same thing.
Yeah.
I think it has improved, but that is what's killing all young and old.
Is it a
That
combination of the heroin and the fentanyl,
yes,
or is it?
yes, yeah. They cut it with fentanyl is included in the product itself, and they use it, but it just shuts the heart down. But here's the other thing: police officers, I don't know if they're doing it there. They carry Narcan with them,
Yeah.
and which they give them immediately, and it reverses the effect, right? And, but I'm hearing stories of cops that are going to the same person 3 times in a day, 2 times in the same day, 3 times in a weekend, same people, because that cycle is going to continue. It's just going to continue, and unfortunately, until they do pass, or the pain's greater than their fear, and they can get off of it. And you mentioned, having a backup plan for the unexpected. Think of COVID. None of us expected COVID.
No.
And think of the thousands of people that died, and their families weren't prepared financially, And the same is true with people in recovery. If a spouse has an addiction and the spouse loses their job, or they lose their house, or and the other spouse and the children are totally disrupted, what is the backup plan? And we stress that with people, especially with married couples, that you definitely have to have an escape plan. You have to have a backup plan, because you and I spoke about that earlier, and that's where the spouse that's struggling, say they have to go away for 28 days. Well, what about the bills? Is the employer in on it? Are they going to cover him, for that week's pay? And some people living paycheck to paycheck, that's vital that they get that paycheck. So,
or they've used all their money for the drugs.
They do.
Oh.
Yeah, and I mentioned earlier that generally the addict, the spouse or the family member that's in bondage to that addiction, is very selfish. Everything is about them. All they care about. They are so myopic in their life. It's the next fix. It's the next high. It's the next one. And they'll go through savings. They'll go through retirement. They'll go through anything to fuel their addiction. And it's sad. And I've been in situations where the other spouse had no clue where the money went. So for your listeners, if you have a spouse or family member that is struggling, by all means, get with Tina, develop that backup plan, and because it could come out of nowhere, and your husband or your wife or your family member, someone, it's exposed, and you had no idea. You had no clue because they were hiding. And then you're confronted with, what am I going to do now? And that's where, Tina, you come in.
Well, I think a lot of families, you think you're married for 10 or 20 years, and even 5 years, that person, you think you do. And I would go to trade shows and say, I see a woman walking with a baby buggy, and I'd say, hey, what's your backup plan? Oh, my husband has that looked after. He's got all that figured out. Really? Really? You think he does, do you?
Yeah.
I have to say, I don't think there are very many couples out there that have a plan that's together with each other.
Yes. I mean, you've probably heard so far many stories than I have, but when that, say the one spouse passes away and they have no clue, and it's, I don't know what, it's generally the wife is left with what do I do?
Yeah.
You know, and that you're right. It should be totally together. And for your listeners, if you have a spouse that you suspect has an addiction, either pornography, sexual addiction, drugs, alcohol, opioids, whatever that may be, if you even suspect without confronting or it being revealed, I implore you to find out where the money is, what accounts, and who has access. You have access, that you're able to get funds when you need those funds, because I've seen in 22 years of recovery ministry, I've just seen um, very, very sad situations when that spouse was confronted and it came to the surface, and the other spouse and the children especially were suffering as a result. I mean, not just financially, mentally, emotionally, even physically. It just takes a toll. And that's why a backup plan for everybody is so important.
Well, the one thing I want to share is when people hide things in that type of partnership,
Yeah.
it's because they have to be, like you said, when when that other person has that addiction, they need to know that they have the support. They're in a
Yes.
comfortable, non-judgmental place. They're not going to
Yes.
get yelled at. They're not going to be starting to throw things at them. They're not going to be crying their eyes out. You know, they're in a safe place where they can find this. The problem is it's there. You can't change it. It's already happened.
Yeah. It's right.
Already conformed. It's already
Yes.
created. It's there.
Right.
So how do you move on? How do you find a solution? And I think that's where a lot of those people get into that, is they feel ashamed, they feel not wanted, or they'll feel like they're not going to be loved, or they'll be judged, and all of these things. So listeners, find a place that you can feel comfortable in going to, a group like Craig's, to somewhere where you're going to find that happy family support that you need.
Right. And here you covered it so well. Generally, the other spouse, the spouse, not the one struggling, right, but the other spouse. And I've seen it happen both ways, Tina, whereas the wife had major issues, right, as well. But if you're the other spouse, oftentimes, if the husband is struggling, he's blaming everyone, including his wife, for his own troubles, and he's defensive, he's lying, and he's manipulative, right? And or she. Um, so that you mentioned, and oftentimes the other spouse takes on, like you just mentioned, that shame, that guilt, anger, sadness, grief as a result. And they're afraid to go tell anybody about their husband. They're afraid to go. That's where you have to get out of hiding and start healing you, the other spouse. Let him or her get in recovery. Let them get their life back on track to heal your marriage, should you so choose, right? But you feel such condemnation. That's why you have to go find the right people, safe people, trusted people that are there to help you. And I can speak from the church standpoint, where there's a good Christ-centered recovery, or a church family, a church network, other resources, local resources, financial support, housing. There's so many. They're there. They're there to help.
If
And
you
you
ask.
just, yes, but she or he has to be able to step up because it's embarrassing. It's so embarrassing to be able to step up, and you feel so bad because you have your children involved. You're trying to protect your children, and you should, but it's not about you. It's not your fault. Your spouse made terrible decisions. They obviously have challenges and issues, character issues. They have their past that keeps them in bondage, and they're trying to medicate it, or they can't break free of something they brought into the marriage. It's not your fault.
Mm-hmm.
So step up and you can find help. And again, there are resources all over the place. And the other spouse hadn't thought about it because they've never, until
Right.
it's brought, until it happens. But if you suspect it, even if you're curious or suspicious, get an action plan in place.
And you don't have to confront the person, but you can go find resources for yourself to know what to do next. Because there's no manual. We're not born with a manual to know, okay, chapter number 6,
if your spouse does this, then you do. Well, there is a Bible, and it's a pretty good life manual. But but it doesn't really. It does speak to it, but it doesn't give clear-cut direction.
No, not good enough.
Yeah, and that's what
needs to change. Let's put that up there.
Let's you and I create a manual. Okay. Do this. Don't do this. No, but it's true. We all need direction, and the other message for the spouse who is not struggling or has an addiction is you'll never be able to fix the other spouse.
But you think you can.
You can try. You think you have that power. You think you do. But the Lord is the only one that can change, fix, heal, and restore.
But
He's the only one that
can do that. As a Pisces, I always felt I could fix them.
Really? You thought you could, huh? I know. Oh, I know. These people, man.
The one thing that I found with clients, and this is a huge one for a backup plan, is parents having a son or a daughter that has an addiction, that has an issue that you struggle with, but you're always feeding it somehow by enabling them to be doing what they're doing. But when it comes time to having your own backup plan, it's so difficult for that parent to figure out, well, how am I going to put that in the will? How am I going to leave him all this money for that person who's going to get all this money and to continue his drug addiction or whatever it might be? So that parent really needs to have a different sense of how to figure out their estate planning part. Or if they become sick, can they depend on that child? Can they depend on that adult to be there to help them? Or are they going to be looking for someone else to be looking after them? All of these things they don't think about because they're so involved in dealing with the issue at hand.
Correct. They
and
are
not looking into the future of what if. So
they are. Yeah, it's a of everything that I experience in my role, it's so hard to see parents that struggle, that have a loved one, son, daughter, older daughter, adult, young, struggle because they're at a loss, And gosh, Tina, I know one gentleman that spent over $500,000 on 4 or 5 rehabs for his son. I mean, I have seen many, many people invest thousands of dollars, for that individual. And I don't even think the son is still on track.
yeah.
And it's so heartbreaking, so heartbreaking. But you bring up a really good point. Yeah, if you have a adult son, daughter that's really struggling and you have to put in some safeguards, then that's where the good attorney comes in and conditions, This money will be set aside. It'll be put in a trust of some kind or something. It cannot be touched. Okay, but here are the conditions. You have to have 2 years of sobriety and abstinence. You've had to go through, be in recovery, and the attorney or whoever will hold you accountable, and you will keep track of this. And until you can prove to those we've left in charge of our estate that you are of a good sound mind, physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally, then you may be able to receive that money.
But it's so hard for the parents because they've been enabling this whole situation for so long that how are they going to put this boundary up now? You know, even if they're not actually there anymore or they're sick, they need to have a better plan of action. And that's what I want to tell my listeners today is that you need a plan of action. And don't wait till tomorrow.
But if you give it to a personal representative, right, or better yet, who is an attorney,
yes,
then you're taking the burden of you, of you as a parent off of you to a degree, and it's at the advice of our personal representative or attorney that this is what's going to be in place.
Exactly.
And but even to get there is what you're saying. It's very hard.
Yeah, very hard for them
because you want, and then they're going to raise a fuss. In the son or daughter, loved one, whatever, they're going to raise a fuss, and that's extremely hard.
Yeah.
But that's part of the conditions. Maybe that might be the defining moment for them to get their life back on track. Maybe that will bring them to the place where the pain is greater than their fear and they're ready to change.
A third party actually saying it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It takes the burden off the parent.
Well, we could talk about this forever, Craig, I think.
Okay. Let's see. I got time. How about you? We can keep going if you want. That's fine.
It's such a topic, we could talk about it forever. It touches so many of us. And if we don't know someone in our own family, we know somebody in someone else's family.
You'd be hard pressed to find anyone that doesn't know someone that struggles with major life issues, be it addiction or whatever that. Yeah. Oh, you'd be hard pressed. No, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. But that's why, I'm passionate about doing what I do until I'm all used up, to take all that pain and everything I went through in the pit of hell, just to be there, to be a friend, and a safe person, and someone that can, be there for anybody for that matter. So, that's what I'm called to do.
Do you have an online service as well, or is it only in-house?
We've had to be on virtual this whole past year, and we have small groups that meet online and everything. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. But no, I'm available. If you'll share my contact information. But if anybody ever wanted to get in touch with me, I welcome them to do so if I can just be of help.
Awesome.
So,
yeah, because I think there's, could be a great start for somebody to get involved in a group, even a group meeting, and see what that's like, and get
there's
involved.
Nothing like it. There's nothing. Oh my gosh, yeah. Because generally people that have loved ones that are struggling themselves are isolated, and they are in dire need of support, prayer, fellowship, developing safe relationships. And that's what you find in Christ-centered or Christ-centered recovery, either, here where we are or around the country for that matter. They're out there. There are beacons of hope everywhere. It's just a matter of finding them. But yes, don't isolate. Find that place where you can share your heart. And I will guarantee, and I don't make many guarantees ever, but I guarantee when you're in that environment, you're going to sit there and you're going to hear the testimonies of others, and you're going to say to yourself, man, they're going through exactly what I'm going through. They've experienced exactly what I've experienced. They feel the exact same way I feel. Wow. And then, support.
Right.
It's all,
Because because you need it. Unfortunately, if you're coming across people who don't understand, that's not much good to you, is it?
no, no, you want people that, here's the deal.
Understand.
When I'm going into a battle, I want someone that's going ahead of me that has scars. I want someone that has been there, right? And I'm fortunate to have those guys in my life. Your listeners need the same. You want people that have been to the valley and back and know what it's like. But what's missing. Uh, what's missing in just care, uh, being a people helper, is empathy.
Mm.
Empathy, and because people that have experienced pain, darkness, challenge for themselves or with a loved one have empathy.
Yes.
Not sympathy, not sympathy. Sympathy is, oh, you poor dear. Oh my goodness. Oh, no. Empathy is, I understand. I know the pain. I know darkness. And I'm there. I want to be there to be your friend. I understand. And I want to listen. Talk to me. That's what's missing.
And
Versus,
we've talked about this in other podcasts actually. I haven't had an addiction, but I have been in a dark place, and I've talked about, being in this dark room where you're trying to find the light, the smallest crack in the doorway so that you can find that door and actually open it up. And I think that's where you're actually looking for that something that,
absolutely.
that's the start of something great. And look at you,
Yes.
you're the best sign of what someone has been able to come from down here to explode. And we all love you for that, Craig. Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you.
I have a lot of empathy, and I've gained a lot of empathy from, gone through all of these storms myself. So yes, I'm a great storyteller of my own stories as well. But
Yeah,
it takes that to understand someone truly,
it
to
does.
say
No,
that you've experienced it.
yep. Yes. There's a huge difference in someone that has experienced it versus someone that thinks they know how to fix you. And there's a big, big difference.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of people in our life that have, think they have their my best interest at their control. But they've all been removed, years and years ago. But oftentimes we do have people that are, trying to tell us what to do or fix us,
Yeah.
and make us feel ashamed or guilty or, whatever. That's not what we need. We
No,
need
absolutely.
people like you, Tina. Empathy, empathy, empathy. Can't say it enough. Love,
Yeah.
it's got to be there. It's at the core of helping others.
Yeah, and I think it comes from not judging.
Yes.
I haven't walked in your shoes, so I'm not going to judge you for whatever decisions you've made. Just like
Right.
whatever decisions I've made in my life, I would hope that I would not be judged for them,
Right.
because it is what it is. It's
But there are hurt people that will judge. There just are, around us, and we don't have to be their friends. Love you, but
love you
we
and
don't
leave
have
you.
to. Yeah, yeah. But that's it. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
So what would you say to the end to this for your listeners? What would you like to tell them?
I would tell them that there's hope. Um, you have every opportunity to change your life. You have every opportunity. Every day is an opportunity to create a new past in your life, but you first have to go back and deal with the old one. And the best way to do that is to enter into a safe environment that we've described in your local church or recovery meetings or wherever that may be, that's safe and where you can go be loved unconditionally, where you'll be accepted for who you are, where you will be listened to for once, and no one's there to fix you. You, whoever you may be that's listening, where you are struggling, if the pain is greater than your fear, you're ready to change. And I just pray that you take that step. And I did, and my life has never ever been the same.
And I did too.
Yeah.
But I must admit that when you come into that dark room and you're looking for that light around that doorway, and if you can only experience, like you did too, Craig, where that door opens and you see a beautiful sunny meadow with
Yes.
flowers and a beautiful breeze and, you know, the ocean, whatever visualization that is beautiful to you is the most amazing experience that you'll have. It's an epiphany moment.
Without a doubt. Wholeheartedly. I love the beach. So you're right. Just opening that door and it's so hard for someone to grasp it when they're in that pit and they're just really struggling. But I will tell you, I never thought I could do it. Never thought I could do it, but I did. I did crack that door open. And my life, oh my gosh, it was that beautiful, you're right, that beautiful ocean, those rolling waves. And, and I wasn't healed in that moment.
No.
But I received the guidance, the hope, the forgiveness, the grace, the mercy, and the strength to work for the next, yeah. to move forward. And, and the hard part is, well, that's great, Craig. You've got, 35 years clean and this, and I didn't think I could make it 35 seconds.
No.
I didn't think I would ever make it out. And it's a what I call a healthy desperation. When you're desperate enough, a healthy way, and the pain is greater than your fear, go for it. Go for it. Open the door and let it happen. And it will.
You won't believe it. But first you have to find the door handle.
Yeah, you do.
You have to find that door.
Well, you do. The Bible says he stands at the door and knocks. He never knocks the door down.
No.
Oh God, you're supposed to be so great. Where are you? And how come you haven't? Why are you doing this to me? And he's saying, I haven't done a thing. All I've done is love you. I'm there for you, but I'm not going to beat your door down. Just grab the handle. It's right here, right there. Turn it just a bit. Just a bit.
And you'll see a little bit of light.
I'm going to take over your life. I'm going to take over your life. So
that's beautiful. What a way to end it. That's awesome.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. All right.
Thank you, Craig, so much.
Love being with you. It's been an absolute joy to be with you.
Well, thank you, Craig. That was it was awesome to have you on board. This was a huge, heavy topic for everybody today. But hey, Craig made it simple. Craig made it unbelievable story, turned so healing, so much for everybody to, whether you're a parent or a spouse or a person in an addiction right now, or going down the dark path of no return, whatever that looks like for whoever's listening or knows somebody that is, it's a beautiful story. Thank you so much, Craig, for your story today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you, Tina.
And everybody, we talked about this during our live broadcast. We have to be prepared for the unexpected. You don't know what tomorrow will bring. So pick up that phone, call somebody, FaceTime somebody today, say how much you love them today, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring, everybody. So, And I always end our podcast and our live broadcast with Carol Burnett, because she was dear and made me smile every time I watched her. So I always end with her. So I always have to look at my song. I'm so glad we had this time together, just to have a laugh or sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, comes a time we have to say, so long. So long, everyone. So long, Craig. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you, listeners, for coming out. And I hope you got some tips and tricks from Craig today. He's full of information. His information will be down below in the description box as well for everyone. Thank you so much for coming on. Craig, stay where you're at. Don't leave us yet.
Okay.
I'll have you backstage after. So thank you, listeners. Thank you so much. Have a great, great week. Bye for now.